Hello, my name is Francis Fox, and this is my chat that's converted into a podcast called Francis Fox News from Other Dimensions. It's on Spotify and on Apple or iTunes, whatever the name of the other viable podcast platform is. I'm completely exhausted, at my wits' end. I don't have any more energy. I think that something needs to shift for me. I had very good news today. uh, Ana Corina from Venezuela, the vice president, who's not elected president because apparently they found some loophole to keep her out. So somebody else is the president, duly elected, and she was selected as the vice president, and she got the Nobel Prize for peace, which is absolutely wonderful because in 2017 or 2018, the Dolphins asked that I work with my group of Mantritas, and we were very few people at that point, that we work with Venezuela. And I was like, why? And they didn't answer. They just said, they dangled a little piece of candy in front of me and said, we'll give you guys superpowers if you work with Venezuela. So I'm pretty obedient. We went ahead, we plowed ahead. What was going on with Venezuela at that point? If you saw Venezuela, it was where I started mapping. The level, which is the etheric level, which is the Higgs field level, the grid that creates stability, the grids to where when there's a portal, then you have instability, like Chicago. Venezuela's grid was god awful. And I said, something big is going to happen here, and it's not going to be good. And that's where the Dolphins came in and asked, it would we please work with them? So we did. We have spent for several years clearing Venezuela, the other dimensions, balancing the elements. And it's the first time that I sketched spaceships. They would come in pink. I would sketch them in pink and go, well, I guess those are the good guys. And the other ones I'd sketch in black. Well, those are the bad guys. And that's the first place where I started to see the triangles, the pyramids. And so we reach today where we have the duly elected government, not in power yet, but will be because of Trump, getting the Peace Prize. They were duly elected over a year ago. The dictator, Maduro, oh my God, what a terrible guy. You know what? He's been wanting to leave forever. And the group around him, with support from some secret people in the United States, has not left. And they won't let him leave. So I want to congratulate you, Trump, because I know that a lot of the reasons why you are in the Caribbean is because you are creating order for that part of the world, and for Venezuela in particular. And I know that a couple of people got angry with me. How can you defend him? Because I have a wider lens and I can see things that other people cannot see. So Trump, I want to congratulate you, and I also want to thank you, because there is going to be a peaceful transition of government. So let me give you the background on this and then jump into more interesting things. Dangerous but interesting. 1969, I graduated from the University of Miami, and I started my master's, and I had to have a thesis. And my thesis title was Institutionalized Violence as a Form of Governmental Change in Latin America. I didn't complete my thesis. I had gotten married, I started a business, and I dropped out. But that was my interest, institutionalized violence as a form of governmental change in Latin America. And I never thought about it again until a couple of years ago when I realized, oh my God, that's what we're doing with Venezuela. We're defending a process. So all of you need to know that you run around doing stuff and you don't really understand why you're doing it. There's a part of you that's guiding you, that has a wider lens, that has incredible masters, and that's taking you to where you would want to be, even though you don't understand that. So also several years ago, I spent several $1,000s and brought in the tantric monks to do a mandala for Venezuela because everybody knew. I thought I was being a big deal by saying, Venezuela has been cursed. And all the Venezuelans said, yeah, we know that. I went, okay, well, I don't get it. Take care of it. Well, they didn't know how to take care of it. So I brought in these tantric monks, not just monks, the ones that know magic. And they did a sand mandala. And at the end of the sand mandala, I was standing in the back of the room and I could see the curse as it was lifting from the mandala, the curse on Venezuela. So I didn't say anything then because I didn't want the bad guys to go after the Tantric Rinpoche. But this is the group I'm trying to bring in, and I'm getting like zero help on that. And I can't do it. It's not a question of spending $7,000 or $10,000. I can do that. I can't bring them from India, get them the visas, and then fund them for the length of time that they should be here to create order in Washington, D.C. We don't interfere, and they don't interfere in free will. They don't. Because they just don't. You're not supposed to. That's the law of the planet. God said, this is a planet of free will. If you want to be bad, you have the right to be bad. And we're not going to interfere. Well, the tantric monks don't interfere either. But they will back your intentions. So any help that we can get on that will be appreciated. And I strongly suggest that all of you that are circling me, because there's a lot of you, you need to know that maybe time is running out, but I'm not saying running out that I'm not going to talk to you. Things have gotten very difficult here. And when I tell you this next piece, you'll go, oh my God, this is like a really big deal. The Vatican is a cartel. Okay, well, anybody can say anything. I mean, look at all these god-awful things that are said about the Vatican, which it turns out are all true. So I'm going to start with this whole thing with the Vatican. I came full circle in understanding that when I say Cuban mafia, I really had to say a Cuban cartel, but it was set up by the Vatican because those Cuban mafiosos, the original ones, my call is very off, but you know what? I'm going to leave it off because I am very off. And you'll find out why. I will tell you in a few minutes. The Cuban mafia that I've been talking about, that does include a few Venezuelans, but I never said it because I don't need another group of enemies. The Cuban mafia were the original group and the core today. Some of them are still alive. They're my biggest enemies. They came in via Operation Peter Pan, which was a charitable operation handled, and you can find it easily on the internet, by the Vatican and the CIA. The story is that the CIA guy had a briefcase. In those years, there were briefcases full of visas, and they brought in 15,000 children. Not a single visa for a parent. They did not want the parents. So I would say it was probably the largest sex trafficking operation up till that time. I'm not really sure. But it was a Vatican operation, and the main guy was a Jesuit. Those are the guys that were put on Camp Opalaca, which is an old military base. And those were the guys that I met when my control wanted a female that he was going to get into Cuba to see if they could get to Castro. And I was the one that ended up being nominated, won the prize, whatever. I was 11 years old. So that camp in the Everglades, well, I ran around without clothes for 2 weeks in a camp full of men in the Everglades. So we're not going to go into all the other horror stories, but because of who my control was, and because this group, who were later offered to go into the military because they couldn't get back to Cuba, and I think that's what they were going to do, the Biden administration, with all these illegals that they brought in, They would offer the young man, well, come on, we'll let you, you're here illegally, don't worry, we'll get you into the military, and then you'll get your papers. But the military, that process of getting them into the military, I don't know individually. I don't have any information. There's no way they didn't do mind control on them, because they did mind control there in that base in Opalaka in 1960. So that group and the Vatican and the Catholic Church in Miami are like this. That group of Cubans, this cartel, was set up by the Vaticans, are controlled by the Vaticans. Okay, Francis, okay, no problem. So, you know about my battle with them and all the black magic and how they controlled Washington, D.C., major events. You can list the 5 major events in political history in the United States, and I think 3 or 4 of them, there are Cubans involved. We're a very small population. How did that happen? Cartel, mind control. Did the Vatican have a hand in that? Well, I can tell you that they totally own these guys that were the head of this cartel. Why am I saying cartel instead of Cuban mafia? Because I was reading some notes that the Dolphins had given me, and they used the word cartel, that this group was a cartel. And I went, oh my God. So I single-handedly went against the cartel. I think I won. Not sure. Am I going to live through it? I'm not sure, not with what the Vatican's doing now, but how did we get back to the Vaticans? A week and a half ago, I woke up and somebody was doing black magic on me in the middle of the night. Oh, that's my daily bread. And as I'm looking at it, I could see the environment, and it was in a morgue. And I wasn't there. There was a dead body. And I've said this a couple of times. They cut the body vertically and inserted pictures of me upside down with my feet up, my head down. And I was like, oh my God. Anyway, I took care of that. The morgue was in a hospital on the water next to Grove Isle in Miami. It's a Catholic hospital, a very big hospital, front and center in terms of power structure in Miami. Smelling. So I said, you know what? This is a great opportunity for the Mantrista movement to see some rituals, because where I have learned the most that I can teach you white magic is from viewing what they do in terms of black magic. Because I'm not going to go to somebody to teach me that, because if they know that, I really don't want to be anywhere near them. It's getting into that world is kind of like you fall into a black hole and then you can't find your way out. So I have a chat that night and I tell my group, we get together. And we open it up, and then they could see that that was the morgue, and that there were refrigerators full of organs that they did rituals with. And I could tell that the guy that had cut open the doctor was a mind control victim. He was like really out of it. Okay. And so I said, well, what do we do here? And then we decided that we would start to, open the refrigerator doors, throw trash everything on the ground, and open the doors and light and everything so that other people would see it. It was not my intention to uncover anybody. We already know the Cuban cartel does this. So it's not my intention. What, we repeat. But within the group, they said, but this is connected to the Vatican. But not because it was a Catholic church. Oh, so it's connected to the Vatican. So we were working on that, and then they couldn't see very much my group. I was a little bit disappointed, because it's like, this is something pretty important. It can't be just me that sees this. So the next night we went back and I said, listen, I know what the issue is, that you guys, most of you, a few of them could see there was no issue. And now YouTube, Bipolar YouTube, having to do with Francis Fox, has now 3 days ago, you can actually translate my chats. So you'll be able to listen to my chats. that are in Spanish, in English. You couldn't until 2 or 3 days ago. I think they suspect that somebody's going to go after them with a lawsuit. It's just too obvious. And Trump has too obviously won. So the next night we go back to there, and I said, I am only going to be pulling off the veils that do not allow you guys to see. It's not a question of me telling them what I see. It's a question of them seeing it. That's how I train them. So it was not easy taking those veils off. We'd pull them off and boom, they'd be back down again. So anyway, we finally figured out who we needed to call in terms of spiritual support that was outside of our, some of them were within our regular SWAT team and others weren't. But basically, the whole organ trafficking thing is huge there because I said, oh my God, there are organs that have been sold before the person is dead, money paid, but they will not dare to do any of that now because we have been screaming about it so much. We haven't shut up about it, and we've been continuously going at it in chat, in YouTube, and YouTube is letting it happen. So there's got to be a lot of people that have paid for an organ. And somebody told me that in their family, they paid $1 million for an organ. I mean, I don't know what the going rate is. And one of the good things is that I picked up that the guys that drive the ambulances are very gossipy. I guess all that time they're standing outside waiting. And they also work with more than one hospital. So we could see that there was other hospitals in Miami that were getting really, really nervous. Okay, so we ended up, each day we would spend time with the Vatican, and we ended up ultimately just going in to the Vatican to do what? To uncover. We're in Revelations. So we're supporting a planetary process that if there's a God that supervises all of this, that God decided that all this stuff needs to be revealed. So what's going on in the Vatican? Exactly what you have all heard. Satanic rituals. The big thing right now, the thing that has me most concerned right now is that they're working on me morning, noon, and night, doing rituals that if I'm not blocking them or they don't eventually stop or I don't eventually stop them completely, they have to stop. I'm not going to make it because these people are determined to take me down. Why? Because it doesn't matter which way you look. There's no way they're going to get out of this because we are in Revelations. Let's say that I and my group revealed before other people. People have been talking about this for years. So we have gone in there several times. And what I said to people, we're not here to destroy anything. We're here to reveal. So just go in, and we got creative. We planted cannabis plants all over the Vatican because cannabis brings light. It takes out rage and the devil energy, ta 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 ta. And it actually is kind of fun because it's like a superhero movie. And everybody has their metaphysical weapons, such as hoses that spray cannabis water. We call them the dragons. They're really, really helpful. And they can pull off the veils very easily. And then they go back down again, but they can pull them off. And some of them, eventually, they won't be able to go back down again because to keep those veils. Oh, and the Vatican works hand in hand with the ETs, with the bad ETs. So by the second night, I could see movement where they were taking art out of crates and then loading them into small vans to take to the airport, supposedly to Africa. I kept picking up Constantinople. I don't really know, but definitely I picked up Africa. Where there, I have no idea. And one of the main things that I found is that there's a 6-block radius around the Vatican where everybody's brain dead with psychotronic weapons for years. I can tell you that the rate of retarded children, autism, behavioral issues, learning disabilities has got to be sky high. And I hope that each and every one of those people go after the Vatican for all that money they do have. Anyway, in the Vatican, they have all those books, they have all the secrets, they work with the ETs, and I do not think that after what we have done that it's going to be business as usual. But here's where we go 360, having to do with the Cuban cartel. It's really a Vatican cartel. The second day we worked, somebody said, "Oh, they're sending somebody from the Vatican to Miami." I would have no doubt of that with what's going on in that hospital. I'm sure they're canceling surgeries right and left. So, how did the whole thing with the Cuban cartel start? It started with the Vatican working with the CIA. But I have to tell you, the Vatican has everything all over the CIA. They the Vatican knows a lot more and has a lot less scruples. And less people are looking at them because, after all, it's the Vatican, it's a religion. Give me a break on this religion thing. This new age, there's not going to be any religions, okay? Even the one that used Jesus Christ as their marketing tool, there's not going to be. You're going to have your direct contact with your God. So the Vatican were the ones that set up the Cuban cartel. The Cuban cartel continues today. Maybe 2 months ago that changed, but until I was still circulating with a regular life like this, the Cuban cartel, which were the ones that were in Watergate, Cuban Missile Crisis, all of that, the Vatican was in control of all of those people. Yes, the CIA was there also. I know that. But it was the Vatican with it there behind the scenes. When I got sent to Cuba in 1960, I was there less than a year. We came from Germany, Rhine Air Force Base, military mind control base. Oh, they raised it to the ground several years ago. I wonder why they did that. Anyway, we were sent, my family, my father was military, to Macon, Georgia. And there's a Catholic school there, I guess, and I was put in a Catholic school. The person who trained me to go to Cuba to work U.S. intelligence with the CIA and in Cuba was a Jesuit priest. And I guess I must have been really cranky because the only thing I really remember about him, I don't remember anything about the training, was him saying, "I can't work with you." With him, her. Whoa, I can't work with her. Me. She knows a lot more than I do. So there we go again. The US government, the military, CIA, working with the Vatican and the Cubans, because I was made a Cuban since the day I was born, even though I was born in a military base in Germany. And then we go full circle to today, that the ritual that was being done in a Catholic hospital that is connected like this with the Vatican was done by the Cuban cartel in the morgue of a Catholic hospital connected to the Vatican. So do we have a Cuban cartel or do we have a Vatican cartel that controls the Cubans? I can guarantee you they control them more than the CIA does. Trump. I told you my handler lived in a house here in South Miami, Richard Rene de Villegas, that property that's a portal. He's the only person I ever met that lives next to a group of nuns. I think they do not live there anymore. It's a residential area without a church near it. And the house next to him was a group of nuns. I always thought, before I could actually think this clearly, that's really weird. Well, it's not really weird. Was he supervising them or were they supervising him? I have no idea. What I'm saying is, Trump, you missed the cartel. You missed two of them. You missed the Cuban cartel, because I don't see that I can walk out of my house yet. And you missed the Vatican cartel. Or were you leaving that for last? Because when we were working, your spirit showed up, Trump, and you thanked me and you said, "Thank you. I didn't want to have to do this." So I think you do know about the Vatican cartel. And I think that you need to get really clear and grounded on the language. Language is like really important. In the Bible, everything starts with the word. To say Cuban mafia is to say one thing. To say Cuban cartel is to immediately remove a veil for people to go, oh, Cuban Mafia so Francis has a problem with a little group of people. Well, that little group of people was controlled by the Vatican. So now, what are we going to do about that? And how many minutes are you going to take care of that, Trump? Because it's not that I'm losing patience. I'm losing life force here. I'm waking up and I'm not breathing, which I think they call sleep apnea. And you can die in your sleep. My level of stress is something has to change having to do with me as a person. Forget the United States, forget the planet, and forget the world process. I've done a lot of work and I need to be able to live, and I can't wait for all the bad guys to be in jail. So the needle needs to move having to do with my position today. The other day I exposed Erica, more enemies. Let's go over. Oh, Obama's father came over on an operation similar to Operation Peter Pan. I could be mistaken because I read that decades ago, but I remember thinking, here's the connection. And then I dropped it because there was nobody I could tell it to, nobody to say it to, so I just dropped it. But I think somebody should follow that lead because you don't know how many other people came in that it looks like that congresswoman that left, or that you guys are trying to get out of Congress from Somalia. How did she come over? How many people does the Vatican have under their control that they got in here under the guise of charity? And I'm going to take a funny break. We're having some issues with inheritance in my family. Decades ago, we were sitting at the dinner table, my husband, myself, my daughter, and my son. And my son just kind of went like, he's Capricorn, structure, money, make sure there's enough in the bank account. But he was like 7. And he looked at us and he said, who are you going to leave your money to? We weren't that well off at all. And my husband didn't say anything, but I said, National Geographic. My son went, you don't even read it. I said, yeah, I know, but it's really good. National Geographic is another front. How do you think they put out that very expensive magazine? Do you really think it's from donations from people? How the hell do you think and why? What would be their reason for getting into all those unusual places? Oh, we're National Geographic. Oh, National Geographic. They're going to take these fabulous pictures. Yeah, they are because they have endless funding. They're a front. So back to inheritances. I'm not going to say the story today because it's too disgusting. But I will say this, I have learned something. It is very important to be truthful. But there's a problem with people that are too nice, and that includes me. A lot of times we don't say the truth because we don't want to hurt somebody. That doesn't work. I never said too many truths because I did not want to distress my children. And if I didn't tell them, I wasn't going to tell other people. I'm pretty good that way. And that ended up being, it could have completely destroyed me forever. Because when the stuff got really ugly, it was not the moment to say, yeah, but I kind of know how we got here. So when you're a martyr, when you don't say the truth too often because you don't want to hurt people, they're not ready for it, you don't want them to have to suffer the way you did, don't do that anymore. Because long term, it's not going to work, and it may end up be the reason you end up in a bad position. You didn't say it then. Now it's a little bit late. So it's a big realization of why across the board, because we think, no, she's very truthful, which everybody knew that I was until I started talking about my history that was hidden. And then it was like I went crazy. But the truth needs to be out there. And then when it's all out there and you widen your lens, you go, oh, I get it. I'm not going to go into the details on that, but I was too nice. And then the person that I was too nice to ended up wanting me institutionalized for being crazy. And she was the one who actually had the documents from when I worked with Dr. Colin Ross, which they ended up being forged. So I needed to have been truthful, and I just basically did myself in because I wasn't truthful. Let's go to the bipolar with YouTube. Well, now YouTube, last several days, you can actually get subtitles in languages. So they know something's going on. And I don't know what they're doing with my cannabis videos where they said that they have to be restricted to under 18. I had already checked that box and that people needed to sign in. I don't know if they're doing that or not. So the 50,000, 150,000 people that would get these free Fox sensory therapy videos with the 420 frequencies, the numbers are not going to get there, but it's okay because I don't make any money from them anyway. I think the last check I got from all my monetized videos, and I do a ton of videos with it's like $13, something like that. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. So every several days now, because I'm talking about cannabis a lot, I get an email, and I'll read this one to you because I left it right here. From YouTube. Hey, Francis Fox, great news. We've determined that your video is suitable for all advertisers. Well, they were always supposed to be monetized, and the title is Cannabis Opens Other Dimensions. So they won't allow the frequency of cannabis unless you're over 18 and you sign in very specifically. But something on cannabis where I'm on a video, that's okay because they're making money. I think obviously that the group that sent this looked at the numbers, which are not that many, 350 people. What the hell is that? Which means it's probably several times that or many thousands times now. Who knows? I have no way of knowing. So I think YouTube is in crisis and cannabis has them upset. And like I say, if you want to know what the deep state does, yeah, I'm associating them. What the deep state does not want the public to know about, you just go to my listing of all the videos and my clips, whatever the ones that are saying still processing and it was 3 weeks ago, they don't want that clip out. And then you just looked at the subject, like the earth splitting in two. They don't want that out there. What do they know? YouTube is bipolar. Trump, I have held back for several years not reading the vaccines. We don't need to know how bad the vaccines are. We already know that. But I believe that it's possible, and I certainly would like to do it, to read about the vaccines with the help of all my masters of dolphins and then come up with a protocol, which I can guarantee you is probably going to be a lot simpler and cheaper than other things that people are suggesting may help. But I'm not even going to look. I am only going to do that if I am guaranteed protection that I'm not going to get taken down either by a hitman or by a lawsuit. Now, I read all sorts of things and come up with these I don't come up with it. In my process, I come up with information that is extremely helpful. And I'd like to do that because they keep asking me in my Mantrista movement, what do we do about those of us that are vaccinated? But I need to have a protection. And the autism, I can tell you stuff. I mean, at some point, I should have a life, right? I am not dying a martyr. So I think when enough stuff is out, I don't really know. But I want to deal with the thing with the vaccine. Okay, so the whole organ harvesting, organ transplants, organ sales on X today, it came out that 30% of organs donors the dead body, organ donors, the dead body, 30% of them show life when they are removing the organs. What the hell is that all about? And I have somebody that said that their family paid $1 million for an organ. I don't know what the going rate is. I don't care. I can tell you this, organ sales in that hospital. I think that one of the ways you're going to be able to unravel this is going to the people like the ambulance riders and the maids that clean, and you'll be able to. And I think there's going to be lots of trouble with people that paid big dollars and are not going to be getting their organs because those people are not dumb as a rock, the people that are in that business, and they're not going to be doing that harvesting at this point. So I think it's kind of like an easy way to get into that. Unbelievable. So the important thing about today is the Cuban mafia is really a cartel. And if we go back to when that cartel, how many political happenings in the United States in the last 50 or 60 years involve Cubans? The latest one were the Chads on the election ballots in the Bush-Gore election. That was in Miami. Those guys were controlled by the Vatican. The Vatican brought them in. And then you come to today, and the Vatican is still controlling that same group of people. So is it a Cuban cartel or is it a Vatican cartel? Full circle. I had not made the connection, but I really haven't had any contact with it, with the Catholic Church here. Anyway, so I'm not a happy camper. My health is deteriorating. My mood is not good. My faith that I'm going to actually get out of here and have a decent life is waning. This has taken too long. Yes, I know. It's not easy. Yeah, okay. I get it. I actually hear you. But the consequences of me hearing you, of still being stuck here, are not good. And maybe they're not good for all of you guys either. Because I know that I give you information that you're not going to be able to get someplace else. And I'm more than happy to give it. But I need to get out of here. So somebody needs to figure this out. And I've said it in the last several chats. Somebody needs to figure this out. It's not a question of me revealing more. You need to figure it out. By the way, cannabis is the best thing for sex. Oh, okay, well, you already said that, Francis. Yeah, I did. But guess what? I said that, and 10 minutes ago you talked about population collapse and people not having babies. Well, they're not having babies because they're not having sex. So when the Iraqi war started, I said we should airdrop marijuana into Iraq. That was when I thought Iraq was the issue and wasn't aware that it was the U.S. military that was the issue and all the lies. So where do we airdrop? How do we facilitate? How do we get Elon, who can beam Wi-Fi to my house through Starlink? How do we get him to figure out how to get the frequency of cannabis all over the place? And then just squash the fuddy-duddies, Trump. They're never going to get it in time. Okay. I need the tantric monks, okay? I'm getting blocked every which way, even from the person that I was negotiating with to bring them over, who's not a tantric monk. I need them over here. This country needs them. You can't move all of Washington, D.C. You cannot get good stuff from people who live on a cemetery. Okay? I mean, we know that. Indian cemetery. Oh, that was an Indian cemetery. That's why things were so god-awful. Thank you for listening. Bye. And congratulations, Trump, because you protected the process of Venezuela having a peaceful transition of government. because that's going to happen. And she got a Peace Prize, which is good because that means more people will be paying attention. Thank you, Trump, and congratulations. Bye.